One of the most prestigious mountain bike forks on the market. The retail value of this fork is $1,400. If you're here early, it's on discount in the description. The RXF38 comes in at 5 pounds and 1 ounces, and if you're metric, that's 2,300 grams, with a full steer tube, making it one of, or the lightest, 38mm stanchion air forks on the market. Many high-end brands make their adjusters unclear or unmarked. So this is not the case with the Ohlins, because they understand that simple suspension is the best, slower and faster for the dumb guys out there like myself. The compression adjuster on the left leg works like this: 1, 2, and a firm mode. So the firm mode you could fully ride on, it's not fully locked out. To put whipped cream on the best adjuster on the market, we have this little tab right here that lets you know where you're at just by one glance down. Your baseline air pressure guide is on the lower leg, but you have to read this from right to left. Remember, it's a baseline pressure, but I have some good news later in this video. A little bit underwhelming with its black stanchions. It doesn't have that Kashima coated, looking good, sitting still, lifted truck vibe like the Fox 38. But the Ohlins badge is definitely a flex, so it's gonna be a dude magnet, just like a nice car. Okay, it feels super plush. Definitely set the fork up to the lighter air pressures off the recommended sticker. Heading out with a full fast rebound and full open compression to test the range of the rebound and just feel this fork out. So 1, 2, it was full fast. Starting over on that trail with a middle rebound instead of full fast, I was basically 100% set up. A truly impressive experience to have this fork dialed in 5 minutes. Ohlins is the equivalent of high performance RockShox, basically set and forget. But I always want a comfortable fork because basically I'm not a racer guy, so I dumped a whole bunch of pressure out of both the ramp up or both air chambers. So the fork's air spring instantly did not feel very good. More or less a lack of control with the lower pressures. The Ohlins air spring is hypersensitive to air pressure. The good news of this, the baseline air pressures located on the back of the lower leg are super accurate for a good ride. So putting the air pressures back and heading back out with a little bit of compression added, let's see how she rides. With the high-speed compression adjuster only having 3 settings, off, 1, and 2, it's pretty hard to get this wrong. So I put it to number 1 and did a hard landing. I can tell you the damping out of this fork is truly something special. I weigh about 100 kilograms or 220 pounds, so here's the settings I ended up with. With a middle rebound, a middle high speed compression, and a middle low speed compression, the fork was completely balanced. So whenever in doubt with low speed compression, just give it 5 clicks. I did discover this fork is super sensitive to air pressure, so opting for the lower side because at this point it did feel a little bit harsh. So let me know what you run if you have an RXF38. This is one of the most friendly forks when it comes to the adjustment period I've ever rode. Typically it takes a week, 2 weeks, a month to get used to a new piece of kit. So the Ohlins is so easy to set up, there is no adjustment period. And this fork is absolutely special when it comes to the cornering and the handling. So typically you have to choose supportive or plush. Are you going RockShox Zeb, super supportive in the corners and a little bit harsh? Are you going a little bit divey with the Fox 38? So Ohlins figured out the perfect balance. It is a little bit on the harsher side and not the plusher side, but this does come with the benefit of being the most confident fork I've ever rode at high speed. So it's not all merry-go-rounds and I bought this fork, so it is definitely not a playful fork, and this is the Otter's MTB channel and I like to play around like an otter, so this is not a good jib and jibe kind of fork. The most impressive thing about this fork so far is basically the setup time is very low and easy. So taking this out a couple weeks later after riding it, it is continuing to be an absolutely silent fork. So this is one massive benefit of running dual air chamber systems. The more conventional air springs found in Fox and RockShox are always going to make a little bit more noise. So when you're riding the Ohlins fork, you can enjoy the other rattles in your bike, like the battery inside of the down tube. This is a little bit of a hard one to explain, so let's focus on the air spring. While it will give you less arm pump than a Fox 38, a RockShox Zeb, and any other fork I've ever rode on the market, it does have a level of harshness without the arm pump. It's hard to explain that one. The best way to explain this is a race car or a race bike. So it has one purpose, that is to go as fast as possible around the track to make the time. This fork came out in 2021 and the damping was so far ahead of everything, but now we're in 2024 and all the dampers are getting so good and so even. So I like to define forks by their air spring character. The air spring inside of the Ohlins 38 is kind of a dud. It has no personality. It is not supportive and it is not plush. While technically the air spring is balanced, it's not plush and it's not harsh, I'm still going to say this is the best fork I've ever rode for the simple reason the compression adjuster is the most effective and useful. So basically you can glance down and be like, I'm on 1, I'm on 2, or I'm full open. So during this descent I did forget to basically click that into the full open setting. It is so readily available to hit the high speed compression lever. That is one thing you could solve. The biggest problem I'm running into currently is basically the shock doesn't match the fork. So I was running the Push 11.6 and it wasn't perfectly tuned for my riding style, but also the damping theories are far different from fork to shock. So I basically ditched the 11.6 and put in the Suntour Voro. So the Suntour Voro is a very simple shock lacking high speed compression. And talking about basically the most prestigious mountain bike fork in the market with a 12-year-old monotube shock, it was better than the 11.6, but it wasn't the best. This is a massive thing to consider if you're looking for a new shock or fork. So basically, are you going to buy the whole package or what do you currently have? Because it can get pretty expensive if you're buying both. The obvious choice was to get an Ohlins shock to match this fork, but it didn't go as good as I'd hoped. So let me tell you about the experience with the Ohlins TTX2 and the Ohlins RXF38. This should have been the first red flag. So the TTX AirShock has open, mid, and a pedal platform. So basically one click of high-speed compression adjust. If you remember, the Ohlins RXF38 has a 2-position high-speed compression, so it's more downhill-oriented style of fork. There may be a small amount of placebo going into matching the fork to the shock, but I personally do not think this is the case. The damping theory between the shock and the fork need to match to have the perfect harmony. So if you're completely oblivious to this, you may not notice. So while the AirShock, the TTX AirShock, is a phenomenal AirShock, remember that all AirShocks suck. And there's a reason that Ohlins does not make a AirShock larger than 230 by 65. So this was definitely the best experience so far in package suspension, but it was, to be honest, pretty disappointing. The TTX AirShock is definitely a light-duty, trail-ish kind of shock, so it's not the perfect match for your RXF38. I kind of had higher expectations going into this system suspension, but I should have known from the adjusters not matching. When I first pulled this fork out of the box, there was a few issues with it, so I didn't want to stuff this into the front of the video to be the negative guy. I would not expect this out of a $1,400 fork, basically making a wretched noise as I pull the axle out. So it doesn't stop there. When they painted this fork, they taped up the direct mount 200mm rotor posts, and I had to do a whole bunch of cleaning before mounting this up. Let's see what we can do to change the personality of the Ohlins RXF38. So there is a negative token installed, and I learned this from a YouTube videos from the Pros Closet. So no one told you how it rode before and after, so let's see how that one goes. Step 1 is we're going to clean this fork off super good to not introduce sand and contaminants into the fork. The airspring assembly is like a cartridge similar to a damper, so you don't need to drop the lower legs. You just basically put this flat on the table and you can slide it out without disturbing the lower leg fluid inside of it. So here's the air chamber assembly. One awesome benefit of the RXF is you can just basically drop in a coil spring and convert this to a coil fork. So the problem with that is it costs like $300 and all these videos are self-funded. I do truly respect the Ohlins brand because they make things super simple to work on. We got 2 crescent wrenches to crack open the airspring. There's no specialty pin spanners to open this up. So once it's open, you can expose the main piston. We need to pry the negative token out of the bottom of this blue chamber. The problem is basically the negative token was stuck in there and there was a good chance I was going to scratch the tube, so I put it into some shaft clamps and unbolted the main piston. So Ohlins uses some really weird specialty thick grease. Not sure what it is quite yet, but everything they do so far is pretty darn good. Inspecting the airspring on this fork, this is why it rides so unique. Basically everything is kind of miniature inside of it. So this is the negative token installed in the fork. So let's see if it actually makes it better or worse by removing this token. Considering this is one of the most expensive forks on the market, I feel like it could come with a Fender and it doesn't. So I'm just basically zip tying one on because it's the middle of winter. Heading out into glorious Portland, Oregon on the test track. So I put the recommended air pressures from the back of the lower leg into the fork. With the negative token removed, the fork is absolutely wallowy. So you're going to need to add a whole bunch of pressure to get the feeling back. So going up about 20 psi, let's take it off the inaugural huck to flat. So I was kind of shocked at this point because I got the loud metallic clank that comes out of normal Fox forks. So this fork never clanked with the negative token installed. So this section of trail, it's not very exciting, but it is somewhat scientific. Basically I can repeat it over and over with different settings and hardware. The fork is wallowy and kind of all over the place, but it does corner as per usual very good. The first hard landing on this fork went absolutely terrible. The bike was all over the place and squirming. So what that means is basically you gotta add compression or air pressure. So I'm gonna start with air pressure because I know I just screwed up all the spring curves that Ohlins probably spent 10 years making. So you're gonna need to go up at least 50 psi in both chambers by removing the negative token. So let's see how it rides with super high pressure. Somewhat improved by adding a whole bunch of pressure, but this is not what I remember from this fork. No matter how much air I'm adding to the ramp up chamber, I'm just basically finding the bottom of the fork. Now adding 70 psi to the fork, I'm not getting the metallic clank, but it's so deep into the travel, it feels uncomposed. This was the most impressive fork I ever rode at high speed. So this is negative token removed, so it's acting rather erratic. And now let's look at before with the negative token installed. Absolutely composed and acting very good at high speed. So I ended up playing with the rebound and the compression for the rest of the day to try to take that dudliness out of this fork. So a dud fork, usually a faster rebound will make it more lively. But I have some bad news, it doesn't. The rebound range on this fork is fairly limited. This is a very good lesson I've learned recently. When you have a plush fork, don't try to make it supportive. When you have a supportive fork, don't try to make it plush. I'm going to say it was a serious downgrade removing the negative token from the Ohlins RXF. It is just a very insensitive fork. I believe they just built this thing from the factory with one thing in mind: high speed racetracks. If you're looking for everyday comfort and you're a rider like myself, kind of mediocre, it's RXF38 or DVO Onyx for that plush, comfortable feel with that big mounting capability. To find your perfect fork and continue this video and find out why the Ohlins is still the best fork on the market, you gotta click this video.